This series was made to showcase the talents of the Airsoft community. I want people in and out of the game to recognize the uniqueness of our game. Sure, you can add a couple of attachments onto an M4 and just call it a day. Or you can go way beyond everyone else and hand make your own replicas. We've seen a lot of that before, and today we continue along that path. Because this is the Airsoft Tops Series, where hundreds of builds are submitted from all around the world to compete against each other for the top spot. Handcrafted parts, artistic designs, mechanical engineering. All these traits can get your Airsoft build on this list, just like the 10 I have to show today. So let's do this. This is just 10 amazing custom Airsoft guns, which is sponsored by Airsoft GI, who helped me spread the word about this series of mine. And I can't forget about G&G Armament, who also have a love for this series. I couldn't do this kind of stuff without them, so I really want to thank them for what they do. Now, I just said that this is a series, and this is my second episode on this same topic, so maybe go watch the first episode after this episode. I'll leave a link for it down below in the description. But with that said, let's start things off at the 10th spot. That's held by Gage of Kentucky for the first video game theme build of the show. Built on a GSG 522PK, this Modern Warfare lookalike hosts an old-school suppressor, a shorty vertical foregrip, a collapsible stock, and metallic gold parts. Gage also carved into the lower receiver and outer barrel with a Dremel, before filling the engravings with metallic gold to match the gold camo seen in Call of Duty Modern Warfare. This build is stock internally though, so it's easier to sell off. Everyone's tastes are different, Gage said. So this keeps the build cost hovering at around $350 to $400. Gage, or Ivy League Airsoft on Instagram, put this MP5 together since, at the time, the MP5K was the first gun he unlocked gold camo for, and he just loved that camo so much. Being different was also the goal, and since this is one of the cleaner of the gold guns I've ever seen out there, I'd say that Gage did a good job at that. Moving along to the 9th spot, a certain Swedish builder makes a return to the Airsoft Top Series while at the same time representing the Dragsoft event. Yep, this is another of Peppe's AKs, which always stand out. This is a pretty simple build though, since most of the construction was done on the outside with acrylic pencils with a week's worth of work. It was really fun to put this AK together, said Peppe, so the time it took to give this AK its fantasy makeover didn't really matter. The gearbox inside was ripped straight from another AK of his that he submitted a while back in a past episode. This gearbox does include a set of very high-speed gears and a high-torque motor that just outpaces any AK magazines out there, but since this is used more for CQB, semi-auto is preferred anyway. And that's not bad for a rifle he uses at charity events to bring awareness of violence against women. And for that, you get my respect, Peppe. Continuing along with simple but fun builds, past top spot holder Carlos submitted this Cybergun WE Desert Eagle. Funny enough, this build was inspired by Ross Radford's Desert Eagle that I shared on my Instagram page not too long ago. This absolutely delicious Desert Eagle laid the groundwork for this hand cannon that's been equipped with a 2032 battery and a 5mm LED with a pressure switch leading into the mag well. Carlos had to take the mounting bracket from the grip off of the frame to install a custom transparent grip, which was made out of laminated acrylic sheets. The rest of the internals are still stock for now, but Carlos plans to give it a maple leaf bucking treatment. The grooves along the upper rail had to be deepened in order to attach anything, and even then he had to chop the front end and a good portion of the back of his clone Seymour mount just to get it to slide on. This would then round this build off at around $250, which isn't too bad for a Carlos build. After all, this is the same guy who put this legendary China Lake together out of PVC pipe. Don't let this gun's placement fool you though. Carlos is an amazing builder who deserves a lot of recognition for this Desert Eagle. Less is more, and I'd agree that it's striking to the eye. So what's next up on the list? Well, we're going to go from Speedsoft to gaming, and then on to historical builds, starting with Darren of the UK and his semi-automatic Ares Striker AS02 at the 7th spot. What you're looking at right now is a $770 non-bolt action, bolt action high pressure air gun that Darren uses in CQB games to completely confuse players before taking them out. The addition of the Polar Star jack kit inside completely negates the need to actually use the bolt. But on the outside, the barrel adapter that's used to accept 14mm counterclockwise threaded tracer units is the only real change. The custom cylinder, trigger box, trigger hop spacer, M4 mag adapter, wiring loom, and bolt that was engineered and printed to allow fitting without making any permanent modifications to the base gun make up all the rest of the modifications. Darand was really smart about this build and made sure that everything done to it could be easily reversed, since some fields and arenas might not be too keen about the idea of an HPA-powered M4 adapted sniper rifle that's not even a bolt action anymore. But the way it is here in these photos isn't too bad. I appreciate people doing things differently, and I personally don't care how anyone plays Airsoft as long as they're not jerks and they follow the rules. So this is yet another great build coming out of the UK. The 6th spot brings back the gamer builds, with a Novrich SSX-23 inside a 3D printed Halo Combat Evolved Magnum, thanks to James of Pennsylvania. Externally, James installed an eye-catching 3D printed kit that he had commissioned before he took a can of gunmetal silver to it, so the accents would really stand out. This took up the entire $200 build cost, since James left the internals of the Novrich SSX-23 completely stock. He said the performance was perfect already, so why mess with it? It's basically a pocket sniper already, which matches the Magnum quite well. James put this thing together to achieve a true appreciation for Halo that began with his dad, who was a Halo gamer before him. You see, James once asked for Medal of Honor for Christmas, but his dad said, "Son, I'm not buying you that game. It sucks. I'm buying you Halo instead." Well, damn, I didn't think it was that bad, but okay. James saw the opportunity to combine his two favorite things, Halo and Airsoft. Plus, he wanted to be different from the milsim and speedsoft scene. Of course, this is a really big conversation starter when he brings it out to a field, and he's sure that his dad would be proud if he could see it. And I believe so too. Next, from Pennsylvania to Michigan, Alex returns to the Airsoft Tops Series with another historical build, this time in the form of an M1D Garand sniper rifle. I love this build, and if I could, I'd have one built out of my own ICS Garand. This is another purely external build, as Alex left everything stock on the inside. The ICS M1 is a pretty good gun out of the box, so just like the SSX-23, there's no real point to adding anything in. To mount the scope that you see, Alex had to take his time to measure and adjust the mount to fit over the barrel. The flash suppressing cone was next up for a little extra detail. And to get this done, Alex looked up hundreds of reference photos to just get the design to look the best. Then wrapping the stock with the cheek pad and inserting his own scope were the last touches to this very different rifle. The M1D is one of the lesser known US arms from the Vietnam War and before that, so seeing one of these in the airsoft world is pretty cool. And like I said, I'd love to get this same treatment done to one of my rifles. Oh, and if it means anything to you, Alex, you had some of the best photos for the submissions, in my opinion. For my next countdown, I think I'll tackle some of the strangest and most heretical builds in the airsoft world. That would be a countdown where these two professionals would really shine, but maybe I should give them their own segments so they don't fight back and forth the entire time for the top spot. So at the 4th spot, we have Dave's Custom Airsoft and his AK-15. Please don't spam Brendan Herrera with this video, but behold the vein of every AK purist. The amount of times I've heard, "Stop trying to make the AK into an M4" is astronomical. So how does this make you feel? Dave began by taking a PTS Car-15 to the bench, and then pulling out some real Bulgarian AK wood furniture for this fusion. Modifications to the delta ring, the barrel, and stock plate had to be done, and of course, Dave had to drill out the stock a bit just to make room for LiPo stick and PQ batteries. Again, the internals were left stock for the reason that they were already really good, so the build cost was as low as $64 and 6 hours of labor, all done in the sake of being different. This truly won't be the last time that we see Dave in the Airsoft Tops Series, since he's a bit of a legend, just like how this won't be the last time that we see Shoguns in the top 3. Built in Taiwan, this is the... Actually, I have no idea what to call this. It's a Mac 11 fused with the Beta Spetsnaz AK. So is it an AK-11 or a Mac 74? I'd honestly rather call it the Mac and Kalash. But I guess Shoguns calls it the AKM-11. So whatever. Sadly, this is the build that I know the least about due to a bit of a language barrier between the master builder at Shoguns and I. What I do know is that it was built using a Well Mac 11, and that looks like a SEMA AK, but I could be wrong there. This build took a lot of handwork and metal crafting to get the two to match up, leading to a really sci-fi looking build that in my opinion looks movie worthy. Shoguns does this kind of stuff all the time. Like I said, he's a master builder, so a build like this one probably wasn't too much trouble. And I could see this going for maybe the mid $300 mark, accounting for labor. It's just another amazing build coming out of the offices of Shoguns, and I expect a whole lot more from him in the future. Now normally, I would get started with the runner-up spot, but you'll see why I needed to include the last two builds in their own segment. So now we're down to the last two builds out of the nearly 200 builds that were submitted. Could you imagine how long a countdown would be if I ranked every single build that was submitted? I already think that these countdown episodes get really long, and we normally only talk about 10 builds, but you guys really like these episodes, so I want to say thank you for sharing the series so much and getting each episode thousands of likes. I really appreciate everything that you guys do for me. And to return the favor, let's check out the runner-up spot, presenting Alexander's China Lake that took an entire 3 years to design and build. A year ago, Carlos took the top spot with his own shell-ejecting China Lake, and recently Shoguns made his own. But this one is really interesting because it's not shell-ejecting, and it was made for both indoor and outdoor games. There is a catch to the system inside though. It had to be completely made from CNC aluminum. Everything you see in and out was custom made from the stock to the trigger setup, racking up a $300 build cost. And I'm a little surprised by that. I really imagined that something like this would be at least $1,000 and up. Now it does fire a variety of ammo types, from solid 40mm stress balls, a BB canister shot, to exploding BB grenades. As a consequence of only projectiles being loaded and fired, the capacity is 10+1 rather than the 3+1 the original massively heavy China Lake is known for. Of course, this kind of craftsmanship continues along into the top spot holder, but here's where you guys come into play. Should Alexander stay at the runner-up spot, or do you think an Englishman named Nathan should sit where he is at the top spot for making the first Airsoft XM191? Now let me clarify, this is not the more popular M202 Flash or the Grim Reaper. This is the former 4-barreled incendiary rocket launcher that hardly ever saw use in the Vietnam War like the M1D. But instead of napalm rockets, this entirely custom built from ground up launcher is chambered for 40mm grenades. Oh, so it's as useless as one of those stupid RPGs then? No, you can actually take advantage of the huge barrels of this replica to fire just about anything you can imagine, from useless shower shells to all the tag and Reaper rounds you can afford. To make this launcher, Nathan made the outer shell out of 3mm aluminum sheets and tubing. The internals are mostly 3D printed from the printer that Nathan actually purchased just for this creation. The firing mechanism also took a lot of work, as it's entirely electronic. And I love how each barrel can be selected independently using a rotary switch at the rear of the rockets. Or you could just fire all 4 barrels at the same time with a 5th position. Something like this isn't cheap though. If you really wanted one of these, then you better be willing to drop $1,300. Nathan first saw this rocket launcher in Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger back when he was just a boy, and since then, he's always been fascinated by it. Then when he grew up and found out that the XM191 was developed and tested during the Vietnam War as a replacement for the backpack flamethrower, he got right to work on this launcher so he could take part in a Vietnam MILSIM event near him. He could have taken an M3 grease gun or an M14 or even an M79 blooper, but he went to the extreme to stand out, to be unique, and that led to the first Airsoft XM191. But after all this, does it deserve the top spot, or does Alexander stand out more to you? Both builders have shown some amazing work, and both builders have handcrafted parts all inside of their one-of-a-kind builds. So this might come down to personal loves for either the China Lake or the XM191, but if you think you could judge these builds fairly, then I'll leave a link to a poll where you guys can vote for the better build. Either way, I really need to thank Alexander and Nathan. you made this episode really stand out. One day I might put together an episode where other top spot holders compete for the very best build, and I just thought about doing that after seeing the top 3 builds in this episode. There's thousands of custom guns out there to be seen, so I appreciate you guys taking the time to learn about just 10 of them. Now I still have a lot to do. After all, there's a lot of ridiculous, weird, and heretical builds out there, so I better get started on the next episode fast. But if you really enjoyed this episode, then show me by hitting that like button down below, or by subscribing if you haven't already. Shoutouts of course go to Airsoft GI and G&G Armament for sponsoring this episode, as well as the Airsoft Heretics group and the UK Airsoft Community group that's hosted 2 of the most popular submission polls on Facebook. And I cannot forget about the USAirsoft channel members that help the channel directly by simply being members. I definitely appreciate you guys much more than you might think. But until that next video drops from the city of San Antonio, this has been Scott Hollenbeck, and I will be sure to see you all next time.